Okay, let's go through some easy ways to play Photoshop with just your mouse and keyboard. So, spacebar with your thumb, your home row keys, right? Spacebar is your thumb. It's going to let you pan around the canvas. Thank goodness they finally fixed where you do this without doing full frame mode, which if I hit F on the keyboard, that's going to full frame. And if I hit it a second time, it's going to really get rid of my interface. So hit F again, go back, spacebar. So I could do that now in any mode, spacebar to move my canvas. So if I want to move and say I want to look up here in the corner, I go up here holding spacebar, I grab, bring it down over here, and then if I want to zoom in there, Z is to zoom in and out. So grab that and zoom. I'm just going to grab the area that I am started with, usually. All right, zoom back. If I want to get it back, I hit F again, and spacebar with my thumb to bring it back. So I'm just kind of doing this manually right now. And you'll see if I zoom way out, go over the side, see it gets pretty good size. Sometimes scrubby zoom's turned off so that you can't interact with it. I'm just sliding my mouse up and down or left to right to go forward and backward with the zoom key on there. Tab on the keyboard will get rid of my UI. So what I usually like to do if I'm working on a composition or painting is I'll go and click on a layer here and just hit B is my brush tool. And let's say, go to this layer here and I'm just kind of brushing. You see it's white. Uh, D is the default black and white. X, which is the foreground and background color. You should also know your foreground, background color sets and how to switch them dynamically so you could go from one color to the next quickly if you're going like a light on dark. If I do that, right, and I want to paint something, I'm working on comps. If I hit tab on the keyboard and full screen, there you go. So now I'm really able to focus on my art, like what I'm making, what I'm looking at, my photography, my graphic design. You don't need to see all this junk when you're doing this. So something to be aware of, just some food for thought that actually right there at the black. And then I could bring my tab, hit the tab on the keyboard. Tab will usually bring most artistic palettes, digital art palettes will go on and off using the tab key. You could get with the stroke visualizer right down there. Okay, so that's pretty easy. We already saved our workspace over there. And if you need to rotate your canvas for your draw angle, so let's see that I'm trying to draw a straight line this way, right? You see my hand might kind of flick up a little bit. So this might be more comfortable for my hand as a draw angle. And this, we do this a lot with the canvas. So what I can just do R, I can rotate the canvas like that, bring it down, and I can actually, get whatever draw angle is good. I can hit R, rotate again, go this way, hit B again, and make it where I could do a nice stroke angle. Stroke angle meaning your ulnar radiosity. That is how the forearm rotates as you move across. And so we'll actually practice in some later lessons. We'll go through and we'll actually practice doing straight lines. See, I got to flip up there. There we go. And if I hit escape, it's going to rotate back. And then Z to zoom back out again. Now, if I want to select all, we did that last time, Control A, delete. And let's look at the actual marquee tools. So down to the moving in the selection area, if we're going to do a new layer, so do new layer, I should have added that on there. We'll hit Control, Shift, plus N is a new layer within the name, right? And so, it's good to be organized about how you're going about this. So Control D, deselect, Control Shift N, and we'll call this one lasso. There we go. So I have a layer for marquee. So let's do the marquee first. So if I hit the M key, go to marquee, and Z, zoom into, get a pretty good full space here. And I can even just remove my tab, get rid of my palette for a moment. So if I drag across, it's going to create a marquee. Now if I want to add to this marquee, I hold down Shift. You see a little plus button. All the selection tools work this way, which is pretty great. So if I hold down Shift, I can add to the selection. There we go. Let go of Shift. Now if I hold down Alt and left drag with the marquee tool activated, now I can subtract and take away. There you go. So you see I got really interesting shapes I'm playing with here. So this is something that you can't do in the real world. This is really unique to digital creativity. So if I want to fill with my foreground color, right here, set the foreground color, I can do it multiple ways. So I could hit Shift F5. Whoops, what happened to my marquee selector? There we go. I hit Shift F5. That's going to give me this contextual fill, which is right up here under the edit fill, Shift F5. So we'll get into the details later that we could do contextual, content aware, you could fill with pattern, you could fill with black, white, but foreground background is the usual way, right? So you usually are working like in a two-tone, a warmer, cooler, a darker, lighter color palette when you first start. The other way to do it is to go down here to the gradient tool, which is G, click and hold on it, and you'll see beneath the gradient tool is the paint tool bucket. So if I go to the paint tool bucket and I go inside here and I click, it's going to fill, go like pouring the paint inside of there, right? So I still have the marching ants on there. If I go back to M, my marquee tool, I can now move that marquee to another location, say right over here, okay? And I can fill it again. So then I go back to G, gradient. Now what happens though is it switched it back to the first one. Any of these tools that has a little arrow, the way to shift between them is to use the shift key. So if I want to use, I don't want to use the gradient tool, although I will show you the gradient tool later. I want to use the paint bucket. So I hold down shift and then I press G. And you see it switches to the tool behind it. Same thing with the marquee tool. So now I can fill this with some more black. And we want to go back to M, the marquee tool. Now if I want to move this, I go to the V tool. And it's going to move whatever's on that layer trapped inside still those, we call those the marching ants until the marquee selection. It's going to move those pixels. You see it actually carve them away from the pixels behind it. It doesn't put it on a new layer. If I want to put this on a new layer, I hit Control X, I cut it, and then I hit Control V and it pastes it. See, it automatically makes a new layer. Now if I want to name that layer as I go, I'll go Control Shift N and let's call this top screen. And then I hit Control V. There we go. Now I have full control over this on its own layer, and the one below it, I can go back underneath there and I can move that one around. So right away, man, this is just so fun to play with. I can't emphasize enough like what you could do with this. So let's see what else we can do here. So then I'm going to go back to Marquee tool, and I'm going to go across here and hold down Shift, and then make another little selection screen. Now, if I click inside this, I can move this around. It's like this little cutout that I have for myself. I could fill it. I could fill around the top of it. There's multiple ways to use this. But if I go to selection up here, remember we looked at select all, control A, deselect, control D, invert selection. Shift control I, if I do that, if I go shift control I, you'll see now I've selected the marching ants around the outer border and around what I had selected, it inverted and created the opposite effect. So I was talking about making a screen or a window. Now if I go in and do another layer, Control Shift N, and we'll call this top top, since I named the other one top. You see my naming conventions are not well thought out yet. And I want to fill it with more black. So I'm going to go, instead of using the G key this time, I'm going to show you the other shortcut, which is Alt Delete. That fills with the foreground color down there. Control Delete is the shortcut to fill with the background color, which is down here, which gives you a little bit more flexibility. So let me deselect that, Control D, and you'll see I have, if I go here and if I want to turn these layers off, I click on the eyeball here and I drag, click, drag. You see I could slide and turn them all off with one swipe, and you see this is the only one left on. Oh, hello, Kitty. Kitty's going to jump on my keyboard here. And thank you for not pressing the keys, Nixie. So you see I have this one on the top layer is filled with white, and I have the black one below it. And I can go to this layer. You have to click on which layer you want to be on. Hit V, go to my move tool, and I can click and move things behind it. So you can see the checkerboard behind means that there's nothing, so I could turn the background on, which is locked. And I can grab this one, turn this one on as well. You see it's right there, and you see it's going to grab whatever's on that layer. Now if I go to V, if I go to my move tool, there is a auto select by layer. So whatever pixels are underneath the little pointy arrow here, it's going to automatically switch to that layer. So if I go to these pixels here on the top and I click on that with auto select on, it's going to automatically go to that top layer. So if I want to go down here to the marquee and click behind this top layer on some pixels, I got to turn that off, the auto select by layer, and go that way. I know it's going to just pick whatever's on that layer and it's going to move those pixels around from that layer. So already, like you can, this is how I like to visualize like game mechanics, animations, you name it. Some other pieces to play around with the layer settings are the opacity. So if I go to this top layer and I go to the opacity and I drag it down, all your 2D digital apps should have some sort of opacity change. So if I go here, now I can turn that one off. You can see now I can actually click on these other pieces underneath there and they're going to be either exposed or fully exposed. You see that top layer that I accidentally moved it when I was demonstrating. So it should snap back into place. There you see a little pop there. Mwah. It has a really nice cross hairs and way of putting those back in there. But now if I go ahead, if I don't want to, if I playing with auto select and I don't want to accidentally click stuff on the upper layers, what I can do is go here and I can lock this layer. There's a little padlock right there and lock that layer. So now if I go down here and I go to click, you see it's a little more forgiving that I'm just going to get those pixels that I'm clicking on the screen. But if I were to go back here and unlock that layer and I have auto select on for the move, if I go to top screen and I go to click it, but it's below or the top right here, you'll see it's going to still flip up there because those pixels are the first ones on the stack that I select. So this is all maybe a lot of information, but being able to stack your layers correctly, um, being able to play with the opacity of your layers, and being able to use the marquee tool, create a new layer. So turn layers on and off. And we'll do another marquee, plus marquee underscore O1. And being able to fill using the shift key, add to my selections, alt to take away. Oops. Sometimes I get a little happy there. I might not have grabbed it when I thought I did. Turn that background back on so we can see. Yeah, I hope you're having fun with this already. Like already, this is, man, I wish I could do this fast with a ruler and scissors in traditional art, paper art, like whatever medium you want to play around with. Like Photoshop is its own beast. Take away, so I want to take maybe carve out something in the middle here a little better like that. Mondrian would have loved this application, right? There we go. So I have all that in the marquee one. I want to fill it with the foreground color. Alt and delete together will fill with the foreground color. And if I want to change that foreground color, I click inside of it. Let's go like a lighter gray. As long as I haven't moved the marching ants, it won't do anything. But if I want to offset that a little bit, I can go in here with just the marquee tool, not the move tool, right? If I go to the move tool, it's going to actually move those pixels. But if I'm in the marquee tool still, it's only going to move the selection, but it's going to leave the pixels behind that were already there. So I can shift it like that and then Alt delete again. You'll see I just did a little shift with the color on there. And I hit D, Control D, the deselect, and I've basically just made a little drop shadow in there. So that is the basics of the layer opacity system, how to lock your layer, and how to fill with the marquee tool, using the marquee tool to use make different shapes, using shift to add to your selection, and using alt to take away, and using the space bar to move around, and making sure that if I'm going to put this on its own layer, I go Control Shift to N, and we'll go blocky bright colors. Name it something interesting. Go into your color picker, pick a color, fill it. Maybe that's a little muted. That's all right. Alt delete to fill. If I want to see that better on top of everything, I would drag that all the way to just below the top, right? And then we can move on, I think, to the next part, which is to look at the elliptical part of the marquee, which is the ovoid one, as well as the lasso tool. All right, we'll see you in the next video.